What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hawks-centric podcast. I mean, a crazy, crazy win for the Hawks tonight over the Celtics. But before we talk about it, make sure you like, subscribe, share the podcast, tell a friend. We're about to have a really interesting conversation. The Hawks beat the Celtics in overtime, overtime thriller on the road. They're now 6-1 versus the top three seeds in the East, which is the best record in the NBA against those teams. So I had to go find a Celtics fan who would be willing to come talk to me after a win like this. So thank you so much to Nate for coming on to the show, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, you picked a good one, man, to have a chat about this, but I'm really excited to, just chat a little bit and go through what we both saw in that game because there's a lot to talk about for sure.
No, definitely. So I definitely want to start off with just highlighting a Hawk, and I think for me at least, game ball goes to Onyeka Okongwu. First off, if anyone wasn't watching the game, the Hawks had two free throws from Jaylen Johnson, up one with a couple seconds left, and Jaylen got fouled, missed both, and then Onyeka Okongwu, who was getting boxed out by Neemias Queta, pretty strong guy, and Jayson Tatum, was able to snag the offensive rebound, got fouled, knocked down two of those free throws, and he finished with 19 points, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks, including a huge one on Jaylen Brown that ended up forcing those free throws being taken. He has now 3 straight double-doubles for the first time in his career. He set a career high in rebounds against Phoenix, career high in assists against the next game against Chicago, and now he just had another great game. So for Hawks fans in particular, we've been waiting for him to force Clint Capella out the starting lineup for a long, long time. And for a lot of us, it's like, okay, it's finally happening. So definitely curious to see your thoughts on Onyeka, the difference between him and Clint, and just overall, what you saw from him tonight.
Oh man, I feel like it goes back a long time with him too. I was a big fan of his coming out of the draft,
Mhm.
but tonight, man, he was just a beast. The one thing that stands out to me, I felt it with both of your bigs tonight, was that they seem to just they set really good screens, but they know how to get out quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big reason why Trey was able to have so much success, especially during like the second quarter.
Mhm.
He's just getting guys behind him instantly out of those screens. That was one of the big things I saw with Okongwu, though. And then his just activity is crazy. Like you said, that offensive rebound, but he was everywhere on the glass.
Yeah, I mean, the rebound thing too is we've been really been asking him to play big. So one of his biggest,
Hmm.
I guess, question marks out of the draft was at 6'8", 6'9", can he be a full-time center? And we've seen guys like Bam do it. That was also when Bam was coming off that finals run. So I just had this conversation with Pablo Escobar, who was talking about it from the Bulls' perspective and what he saw from him pre-draft. And he thought a lot of the reason why he went so high was because Bam was having such a great season for Miami. And we haven't necessarily we've seen the versatility that's similar to Bam, but in terms of like really anchoring a defense, he hasn't exactly done that. But the physicality, the force that he's playing with, this has been a different dude. And he is coming off a bit of I think he had a toe injury last year. He had a little bang up injury to start the year as well, but he's getting much closer to being that guy that can force Clinton up the starting lineup because, and I'll probably go on a rant about it a little bit later, but Clinton had some really, really bad misses around the rim, including two hook shots that he threw with his left hand and had no chance. Like it was a curveball somehow coming out of his hand. So I think having that competent finishing is a really big thing for the Hawks because again they have a playmaker like Trae Young. But I'm curious, what Celtic would you highlight from tonight's game?
I'll go big for big with you. My guy tonight was Luke Cornette, man. I thought he was just straight up awesome.
He
And I
was.
don't know if it had something to do with Okongwu at the end, but I really felt like going with Keita for them kind of, that's when things started to unravel a bit.
Mhm.
Cornette, I don't think he's given up that offensive rebound at the end. He's just very sturdy about that. But yeah, I mean, Luke, offensive glass, just in the paint, his presence was good, tipping in. He had a nice, like, little lob tap in from Tatum at one point that was really nice. But he's just so solid. And then when they ask him to step into a bigger starting role tonight, when they've got Kristaps, Scott Horford out, what did he put up? He finished with 17 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 4 steals. Like you can't really ask your third center to come in and step up like that all the time, but he definitely did.
No, for sure. I was honestly stunned. At the same time, like we have had issues um, with just trying to deal with true 7 footers, and even if he isn't the most physical guy, he
Mhm.
still was able to get his way in a lot of ways. So I think Um, when you don't have Porzingis, you don't have Horford. Those are your more versatile bigs, but I definitely thought you guys should have closed with him. And we'll talk a little bit about him in particular, especially with the way that the Hawks were able to operate offensively in overtime and why I thought maybe that he should have been out there. And I definitely agree with you on that. From my perspective, Peyton Pritchard, man, like the dude was quiet. He was real quiet. And this is what happened. I was listening to the Hawks broadcast. They said, "Oh, the Hawks are killing them in bench points." Hawks, I think at one we had 22, you guys had 9 going into the fourth quarter. And then Peyton Pritchard just took it personally. And he finished with 20, had 13 in the fourth. And I thought, oh man, it's so over because he got the crowd into it. He kind of like just created a lot. Of course, he has ridiculous range and feels like if it's in the shot clock, it's going in. So I've definitely been impressed with him. I really enjoyed watching him when he's not playing us. You know, then when I was on the like actually getting those shots hit against us, I was like, oh man. Yeah. But I did like hearing like Scalabrine was saying, oh, you know, these are 2 guys going for 6 man of the year, and Payton Pritchard's outplaying him right now. Then DeAndre Hunter came back. He had 2 big buckets in the fourth as well to kind of keep stem the tide because the Hawks in general have had a lot of issues keeping the games close when Trey goes to the bench.
Sorry, man, cat rolling through.
No problem. You know, they've had issues like keeping the game close when Trey goes to the bench. I think today they were +1 with Trey on the bench, which is not something that typically happens. And they were able to keep him out there in a game that went to overtime. They had 14 minutes with him on the bench. So I think that's also a big point to him being able to keep his legs fresh. The importance of having the 6 man and Dre responding to the call and, you know, being able to battle back and forth with someone like Payton, who's been arguably one of the best volume 3-point shooters in the NBA, which I think is no one was really expecting that, but I'm really impressed with him. I was wondering, have you seen that tweet where that guy was saying like Payton could be a number 1 option in the NBA? Have you seen that?
No, but it's nonsense. You know, I love Peyton. Don't get me wrong, but I think I had a coworker recently that told me he could average 30, and I just told him there's a select few guys that can go out and get you 30 every night. You got to think about how much pressure is taken off of the guy by playing against, you know, with great players.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the lines of like 20, 22 a game, maybe if he was kind of running the show a little bit on his own team. I don't think I saw the one you're mentioning, but I definitely agree that he was huge tonight. If anybody was like making shots, his shot making really kind of almost put us over the top in this one. You like you said, he got the crowd involved there at the end. I thought that was kind of when it was going to be over.
Yeah,
nobody else met him there with the shot making for us. It was pretty bad. I posted about our starters, and you know, aside from Luke, the other 4 guys were under 40% from the field. It's just a little bit miserable tonight.
Yeah, I do think some of that was the Hawks defense, and again, we'll talk about it about how they were able to. I've never seen us play. We've been way better defensively this year. Don't get me wrong, but they were crisp every single time when the Celtics were trying to exploit mismatches. So we'll definitely talk about that. I would say for me, or I guess I would like to hear like what Hawk did you so what popped off the page for you outside of Onyeka Okongwu?
I mean, I want to say Dyson Daniels. Like it's an easy answer, but that man's scoring against us right now. Like
It's ridiculous.
The floater game was just unbelievable. So you know, I know he's got a little offensive game, but the touch on some of those floaters he had, it felt like at any kind of time where the Celtics might start to pull away or like get some momentum, he would just answer with a nice timely floater like that. Obviously, he's a good answer. Trey, I feel like he dominated for kind of specific stretches of the game. You know, second quarter for him, he was like a plus 12 or something like that in the quarter. Other times it didn't look necessarily as good, but I think those 2 would probably be my nominees for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It can be for a long time. Like if Trey has a game like this, the Hawks are like there's just no chance that we ever able to win this game. And I think we've been able to sort of lean on our defense a lot more. So I definitely do want to go through some of these clips. And just as I'm peeling them up, I'm curious when you think about mismatch hunting, like obviously Tay was the best player on the floor. And you technically you will want him going up against Trey at any point, right? But I feel like they didn't really explore that with Jaylen Brown. So I guess from your perspective, like, would you have liked to see them bring Jaylen Brown into those actions more, or were you okay with them continuously going to Tatum in those moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know what you're saying. I feel like I saw your post about it too, that they went after Trey with Tatum like 4 different times and didn't really come up with anything. So I think you still go for that matchup. I'm okay with them, like you're saying too, trying to get Brown involved, but I don't know. I think when you can get a size mismatch that much, it doesn't have to become a shot for Tatum necessarily, but it does put a lot of pressure on the defense there. So I don't really have a problem with that. They just didn't really capitalize tonight.
Yeah, I think it was, again, good process, but I do think in some ways, like you guys, I mean, don't necessarily want to take a ton of threes. I mean, not threes, a ton of like mid-range attempts. And so
Mhm.
it seemed like at least one thing I thought the Hawks did pretty well was scram Trey out of these actions. And so what
Yep.
that means is basically they were able to bring in a bigger defender when guys weren't in position. So let me see if I make this a little bit bigger. So I think this is a good example. Sorry, get a bit bigger. Okay, cool. So they would do it in multiple ways. So the first way would be they would kind of like try and funnel Tatum when I love playing against Boston because it's always a chess match, right? Like Joe Mazzulla is a guy who's
Mhm.
who's gonna understand what the Hawks are doing and try to take advantage of it. So after this is an example like the scramming possession. So they would set this high screen with Tatum. Tatum would roll to the middle of the floor, and you can see they're already setting up this pass off. So this contest, even though it's still a good shot for Tatum, it's a much more consequential contest as opposed to if it was Trae Young. And so the Hawks were able to do that on that possession. You can see them do it again on this possession here. Down the stretch, fourth quarter, Tatum setting the screen. Jalen Johnson runs over on the catch, and he's able to get just a little bit more force on that. I still think Tatum's capable of hitting shots like these, but it's a better way to contest them, of course, than trying to have Trey do it by himself. And
I like
then
the awareness from Tatum on or from Trey on that last one where, like, you can see kind of as that pass is coming in that he's looking for who's that Jalen Johnson over there? Yeah, he takes just, like, a quick peek at him. There obviously,
right,
that's on all the Hawks to be aware of this, but, yeah, you can see him just, like, totally understanding the situation there, and Hawks, to their credit too, everybody's ready for it.
no, definitely a good pickup. And this was not something that the Hawks have been great at, like this terms of off-ball communication. It's really hard to double or pass off an assignment when a guy's actively catching the ball. And I
Mhm.
think it just kinda threw a little bit of a curveball for the Celtics. Like, again, Tatum is good at taking these shots, but I think he's a little bit better when he has his own rhythm where he knows like the
Yep.
contest is coming. If you turn, you're expecting to see Trey Young, and it's actually Jalen Johnson. That's a little different. So I do
Yeah.
think it was a bit of a change of pace for him. And then so the way the Celtics countered was instead of having him roll to the middle of the floor where you can bring that extra defender, they instead would leave him at the top of the key and then try and see if Trey can handle him in space. And on some possessions, Trey was able to funnel him. On other ones here, like they're able to get a hand on the ball, but they weren't able to finish the possession. But I thought this was a nice wrinkle from Boston to try and get him in more space where they can't bring that double as easily. And then here's another example. They're gonna do that same thing. Boston's up three. They're not gonna bring Tatum all the way to the middle of the floor, and now he has to try and contest him. But from the Hawks' perspective, if Jayson Tatum's gonna take a three against Trae Young, you'd rather that as opposed to him getting bullied. So it's kind of like a give and take there. Um, again, here's another example. Like Boston was trying it. They were definitely trying to get Trey on the island as much as possible. Here he's going to drive. This is really good hands from Trey. So he's going to bring it down low a little bit here. He knocks it out, and then the Hawks went the other way. So I think, and I'm sure you've probably heard it as well, but Trey doesn't have the greatest defensive reputation. I think this is one of his best defensive games all season. I also think this is somewhat similar to what Cleveland did in that matchup. I don't remember exactly when it was, but Garland got switched on the Tatum a lot, and they try to bring help in innovative ways. And I do think the Hawks took a little bit of their own sort of ways to figure that out. I think this one is also so Tatum's gonna sit at the top of the key, and he's gonna take a three. Like again, he's a good shooter, but if the aim is to attack Trey, I think you want to force him to the 3-point line as much as possible. Um, so, what do you think that Boston could have maybe done better in these scenarios? I know you said you're okay with living with getting Trey on that mismatch, but would you have wanted to see him maybe catch it and face up and then draw help, or were you okay with those more quick decisions, similar to like those mid-range pull-ups?
Again, I do think like I'm okay with the idea and the process behind it, but I almost wonder if it's better to get into, once you've got that switch, maybe to get into a pick and roll now that Trey is Tatum's primary defender in that, instead of just electing to go like straight ISO, or in this case here, like a free throw line post up here. If
Right.
you try to get him in the pick and roll action, I think that might be a little bit more favorable for us, and then you can't really scram him out of the play, or you can't get as much easy access to help in a situation like that. So that might be where I would have looked. I think again, Missoula was probably okay with the process on that, but it's really good defense from the Hawks. I think it might have been your second to last player. One of them, again, there's just like Hunter is very much cheating off ball in case he had to go scram. It was actually the play where I think, they forced a long Tatum three on this end. I don't know if it's this one.
It
Um,
might be this
it
one.
might be this one. Yeah, let this one run again. I think it's Hunter in the corner here, who you kind of just see.
It's not that
It,
one.
not the
Maybe this.
three. Let's see.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah,
one.
you see him ready, like as Tatum is on that roll there, Hunter is just like immediately ready to go get that help. So I just feel like the game plan is good from you guys all around when it comes to let's go one on one with Trey. So I
Mhm.
do think if you get that mismatch, and then we can, let's say, like involve him in the pick and roll with somebody, maybe like Luke. So then you've got Trey, and then you've got Okongwu pulled kind of out of the paint as well. That might have been a good way to go.
For sure. I think one thing that's obviously unique about you guys is that you don't have any defensive liabilities in the lineup, right? Like there's not really anyone you can just draw out and attack. And that's even for
Mhm.
guys who may be looked at as not as strong defenders, but they're really good team defenders, Payton Bridges, Sam Hauser. You mentioned Nemias Queta kind of was bleeding points a little bit in pick and roll. Obviously, he's not the type of guy that you'll see get rotation minutes with us in the playoffs. Like hopefully, if those guys are healthy, Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis. Um, but talk a little bit about like just the challenges of playing that heavy drop center, that heavy drop center against someone like Trey, and then like, do you think that you would have switched up the coverage a little bit, or do you think it's just more so a personnel thing where those guys are best in drop, so you've kind of just got to go to drop?
Yeah, I mean, personnel is tough when you're down two of your starting centers. You do what you can with what you've got. I didn't like Kata at the end there because they didn't seem very certain in what they were trying to do defensively. Like you probably might have a couple of clips of it too, where instead of maybe switching, if that's why you had Kata out there, they went for sort of a trap. Both times it ended pretty poorly with, I believe it was Okongwu slipping out, and he just didn't really impact the play. So at that rate, if we're going with that coverage, I would probably rather just have Luke in the game, who I trust more to execute something like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, Kata just didn't look like he was the right call for that.
It's a Trey struggle with his floater all season, so I think part of it was he was dealing with that Achilles injury. Um, but going against Boston, like I mean, this, maybe the audience may not know it. The defensive principles are to try and limit as many 3-pointers as possible in rim attempts. And they're going to try and make that bet that they can outscore you from three, limit you from three, and then they'll concede some of these paint or like middle of the floor shots. And so when you go against someone like Trey, like this is really comfortable for him, right? So you can see when you watch Luke Cornette, his concern is not containing Trey. It's everything about preventing the lob. And also, I think in general, you guys are really good against defending lobs. Like, I think there were at least 4
Mhm.
or 5 breakups, and teams aren't typically able to do that. We're only able to get 2 lobs, I think, to Jaylen Johnson. And a lot of that is, I think, is a commitment to the role man, but I think it's also about like being able to trust the guys on the ball. Like if it's Drew Holiday or Derek White, like you can trust them to limit penetration as much as possible. And I think particularly in the third quarter was when he got going with the floater, and then kind of like near the end of the second as well. So you're going to see something similar where it's just heavy drop. Cornette's not really worried about the floater as much as like maybe some other defenders may be, and I think that's entirely like the game plan from Boston.
By Jason Stone,
injury
lawyers, official injury law
it's tough because like on a night like this where, in my opinion at least, like you guys missed a lot of shots that you typically would. 0 for 7 from the corner. Ended up finished. You took 80% of your shots from the 3-point line or from the rim. And so that's an ideal shot profile from Joe Mazzulla. Like he's probably checking his notes. He's like, we got the shots we wanted. They just didn't necessarily go down. So I guess and here's the thing too, like when you have a Jayson Tatum and a Jaylen Brown, like one of the beautiful things about the Celtics in general is like very versatile basketball. So like, yes, the biggest offensive goal is to get as many threes as possible, but we can operate in the mid-range. We can drive to the paint. When you don't have your bigs who like stretch defenses from like picking and popping or like that can drive closeouts a little bit better, what do you think is like the best way to generate offense outside of just driving and kicking? Like, is it putting it in Jaylen Brown's hands, who's maybe been the best playmaker on the team, or is it continue to like try and empower Tatum to attack on the ball? Especially when a team like the Hawks, like it's the biggest thing for me too. Like it's the defensive principle for Boston is to allow these points in the paint where you're going against a team that thrives in the paint. Like Atlanta has the second biggest differential between their points in the paint and their opponent's points in the paint. We were plus 34 in points in the paint. The first win, plus 18 tonight. And then we took 41 shots from the mid-range and paint tonight. Boston took 22. Boston went 6 of 22. Atlanta went 25 of 41. So 2 questions. Against a high paint attempt team, would you like to see the scheme change a little bit to try and force them into kicking it out, especially a team that doesn't have like as many shooters? And then offensively, when the threes aren't falling, like who do you trust to create the best offense for you guys?
Yeah, good questions. I think first,
an assist tonight. Leads
the
the
main
league for the
question I
season,
had
almost 12
is,
per game.
could we have tried to go under a little bit more on some of these Trae attempts? Like, I know that's not the move every single time. The guy has a deadly pull-up, but the fact that they were just pretty much allowing him to get a defender on his back in every possession when they ran the pick and roll, it's like that's exactly how the guy likes to operate. Get into this little area at the free throw line right there, and then it puts Cornette in that bad situation where it's like, all right, I'm taking away the lob. That's number one priority for them. But then you do come across a guy like Trae who is just elite with that floater. He's a tough cover, man. You can't stop both of those if you're a guy like Luke Cornette. There's probably a handful of bigs that can do a good enough job to both impact that lob attempt and then make them question that floater a little bit. Like Kristaps is tall enough and kind of, adept at sort of making guys second guess in that case, I think. But with Trae, it's just such a hard cover that I do wonder if going under some of those pick and rolls would have been to their benefit. I don't think he had the best 3-point shooting night. Could be wrong, but he went. He finished 3 for 10. He had the interesting, one-legged bank 3 on that. So I wonder if at some point he decides to just switch it up like that. That's number one for me. And offensive process. Again, I don't feel like I had too many issues with it. You called it out that they missed a lot of very good looks. I think that the same was true for you guys. They felt like a lot of like momentum swinging shots, especially towards the end, that you guys weren't able to capitalize on either, which was kind of surprising. I usually expect those to fall down against the Celtics, honestly. I think that's just the fan in me. But I didn't really have too many issues with the process tonight. Like, again, what we talked about earlier, maybe just if you get that mismatch, we try to use it in a different way instead of just pure one-on-one isolation. Towards the end, there were a couple of Jaylen possessions too, where he's drawn Capella, I think, out to the 3-point line. He sort of like half attacks him and then he backs it back out again. It's just, like when they get into that offense, I'm not really a fan of that. So again, if we have what we're going to consider a mismatch with like a Capella on Jaylen, let's see if we can try to use that more effectively than let's just go isolation ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I definitely want to just run through some of the overtime clips and just see the differences in how guys were attacking, how each team was attacking, because this is kind of like what I mentioned, where you bring Jaylen Brown as the guy to attack Trae as opposed to Jayson Tatum. Now, I do want to ask you something. I'm trying not to be biased or, just be, sometimes I feel like Jaylen Brown pushes off. Do you think that he pushes off, or do you just think he's kind of just a strong dude? Because like I feel like there's a he also could just move guys, but I'm just curious. Do you think he pushes off?
Yeah, I mean, if you look close enough, you're gonna see that probably a good amount of times. Him and Jason both, they're gonna do a little bit of that. He also can just bully guys straight up, so I think he gets some of the benefit of the doubt in situations like that.
For sure.
This one's a bit egregious. I can't really tell. It looks like maybe Trey's trying to get a little pull out of it too. I think that's a sneaky thing that guys have started doing. They
Okay.
sort of, as the defender, get the hook like
Mm.
inside the arm, and then it looks even more like an extension. So we might have a little bit of both of that going on here, but I do think he plays physical, so he's probably going to get the benefit of the doubt in some cases like that.
That's a very political answer, but I will
Yeah,
say
I don't know.
it's
I'm
definitely
not
correct
gonna
though.
say like every time down he's knocking dudes over, offensive fouls and all that, but I'll give you that. Like this one looks kind of bad.
No, I mean it's definitely the same thing as like I think guys who play with physicality are just allowed to play a little bit more. Like and then teams in general, like I think for us, we've had an issue with refs hasn't we haven't been a defensive team that like responded with force. So when Dyson started taking the ball away from dudes early in the season, they were very quick on the whistle. But now they've seen that we just generate deflections against everyone. It's kind of calmed down.
Yep.
I think it's similar where like guys who have a reputation for playing with strength, they're going to allow you to throw your weight around a little bit. But to the point of Jaylen Brown, in general, he's having one of his best playmaking seasons, maybe probably the best of his career. So here he draws two. You can see there's already kind of a cross match here. Onyeka comes over to help. Derek White, who went 5 of 16 from three, like he was getting them up. So here it's a little stunt. The Hawks really don't want to give up a corner three. Derek is hesitating a little bit, but he's still an elite shooter, and so he knocks that down. So that was a big shot. I don't like when Derek White has a shot in the clutch. Like I just feel like it's going in. So I didn't really want him touching it as much as possible. So here, Kate is on the floor. You get a switch here from Onyeka. He's able to keep his feet. I think this is a really good contest. Like this is a really good defensive possession from Onyeka Okongwu. Tatum's able to create separation with that. He gets down, step back, really good contest without fouling. Ball is short on the other side of the backboard. So big defensive possession, I think, from the Hawks there. And then here you get, and here's the thing, what I do like about the Celtics a lot is like you can just sort of, okay, if Jayson Tatum isn't going, you can put it in Jaylen Brown's hands. So here Jaylen Brown's able to get downhill, get Derek White wide open, and he ends up knocking this
It's a
down.
good
Again,
read from Jaylen there too on that drive. Like looks off the corner a little bit, gets the defender moving.
and I hate seeing Derek White with the ball in the clutch. One thing I want to point out is like without Reza Shea, who again probably isn't going to play clutch minutes for the Hawks until maybe next season or a little bit later, we don't really have a strong on-ball defender who can get through screens. So you can see DeAndre Hunter kind of dies here when Kata is able to make contact, and then that creates the ability for Jaylen Brown to get downhill. Again, you can see the Hawks are really, really emphasizing not giving up corner threes, and I think that this is what you have to do against a great shooting team like Boston. You have to pick your poison. Derek White hasn't had the best shooting night. He's above the break. You don't want anyone to shoot an open three. But if you can try and find a way away from the corner as much as possible, I'm okay.
My question for you on this, don't mean to interrupt, but my question for you on this possession, if you rewind it a little bit, aren't you comfortable with Okongwu here compared to like Jalen Johnson really actually needing to help on this possession? I feel like that's where everything changes.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you just let Okongwu go one-on-one on this drive with Jalen instead of stepping up like Jalen does right there, I think I would live with that drive if I'm the Hawks. That's not to say Jalen doesn't win that rep, but I don't know if that help from the corner is necessary because then it puts Trey in a bad spot trying to cover, zone up there with the 2-on-1.
No, definitely a good catch. Me personally, yes. And I've lamented us overhelping all season. And I think a lot of it is just like guys are used to having to cover up other guys' mistakes. Like again, this has not been a good defensive team for a minute. I used to see it a lot with Dyson, where Dyson would have a guy in isolation and Clint Capella's flying over. I'm like, that's Dyson Daniels. He's got it. Like trust Dyson. That's something I've been begging our guys to do. Jaylen Brown has a step here, but I think Onyeka has enough. He has his hips square. Like I think he can contain him as much as possible. And if not, it's going to be a tough finish or it's going to be a pull-up midi. So I definitely agree on this rep. I would much prefer. I think the issue with Boston is like it's so hard not to overreact because it feels like there's such an overpowering force driving the ball. But I definitely agree that I wish this would have they would have allowed Onyeka to just try and play that one-on-one because again, that is Derek White on the wing. So here you can see that aggressive help on the catch, kind of similar to where if this is going to happen, this is why it's so much more dangerous, I think, at the top of the key as opposed to in the middle. So now Tatum's facing up. He can read whatever option. He opts to, once he sees Jaylen commit over to Keita, he freezes on Onyeka by staring over there, and then that's a really good pass right into the shooter's pocket. Jaylen Brown rises up and knocks it down. Big shot. I guess from the Hawks' perspective, like, it's tough to not bring help immediately. I would probably wait a second, like try and make Tatum make a move instead of being able to diagnose everything. But again, this is just kind of the issues of trying to cover up for a guy defensively. Like even though Trey had been really solid in space, like you want to show help. Not much you can do on that rep, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about small margins there too, where like, it's not even a bad contest on that last one. Like he was a fraction of a second late, but he still got to that hand. Like I think I just like your guys' activity kind of in rotation and seeing how even on the weak side there, Jaylen's ready to go pick up Keita instantly, and then that lets Okongwu get back. But again, I feel like that's a good enough contest right there. Like he's at that hand before the ball's out.
Yeah, that's a huge shot from Jaylen and like a crazy shot. Activity is kind of like where you can make up for these defensive lapses. So it's like as long as guys are competing, like you can try and get over there as much as possible. I was very concerned with the way this overtime started the first 3 minutes. Like, it felt to me like these shots were being generated a little bit too easily. But again, like great effort from the Hawks, but I was like, oh, this is a bad trajectory. Like it didn't look too good for us. Here again, you see the rotation. So I believe this was a handoff or something like that. So Derek White gets downhill. You see good rotation from the Hawks to try and cut it off and force it out. I thought for sure this shot was going in. I think
me both.
I thought it was going in.
Yep.
Huge board by Onyeka. I was huge board. He was a beast on the ground. Also, have to point out DeAndre Hunter finding a body. This is not something that he would do. Maybe a little bit of a hold there, but this is not something he was doing consistently. But if he doesn't find that body and Kate is able to get full leverage up, this is probably a rebound for ball. Again,
I mean, you like having your guys get down in the trenches like that, even if you get a little bit of a hold. They're probably not calling much of that right at that point in the game, so whatever. You can get away with that.
For sure. So I thought, in general, like Boston is not an easy team to guard. Of course, like you guys are maybe the most versatile team in the NBA, and you got guys like Tatum and Brown. But this is what I like. To your point, this is where you want to see just try to take it in space. So again, this is such good communication from the Hawks. Like the basketball nerd in me, I'm like, bro, this is amazing. But just watch here. You're gonna see Keita dive to the rim. Jaylen calls it out. Okay, I'll pick him up. I'm the second biggest player on the floor. You peel off to Jaylen Brown in the corner. This is how you set yourself up for success defensively. You trust your big, who's versatile to try and move. He's in good guarding position. Tatum's pretty strong. He's able to lay it up over the contest. But the Hawks do everything right defensively on this possession. Like everything, switch was executed well. Scram switch executed well. Just a tough bucket from a tough player.
I mean, that's a crazy lefty finish right there. I didn't think that one was going down, but yeah, that's exactly the point I was trying to make. Like you should live with Okongwu there because you see how differently the floor kind of feels on that Tatum drive. There's no options for him. Jaylen's not really anything in the corner there, and D White up top. Hunter's got him too. So yeah, I mean, I think that if you have the versatility defensively. And a guy like Okongwu being 6'9", well built, he can move. I feel like that's the right type of guy to have here. And you guys have like 4 of those people. So I don't know. I think you just trust them, and it sort of, it takes away some of the great spacing that Boston has. if you can just trust those one-on-one guys. So, but yeah, I mean, crazy finish from Tatum overall to kind of negate any of that, but still.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Boston's offense is like, okay, how much can you survive staying one-on-one against us before you have to bring help, and then we'll start kicking it out. And so there's very few teams who have the luxury of being able to say, okay, our center can try and stick with these guys in space. So you have to take advantage of that. This was, dude, huge play. Jaylen gets a step on DeAndre Hunter. Again, like Dre is a solid team guy, but he just doesn't move his feet well, doesn't navigate screens well. So I worry in scenarios like this. He opens up just a little bit. Jaylen's able to get a step, drives back into him and creates space. This is probably going in. But Onyeka leaves the short corner. I mean, the dunker spot, high points the ball. Dude, huge play. And then what I love about this too is he stays engaged, right? So he's able, again, probably would want him to be a little bit more aware here, but he's still within range of Jaylen Brown when he goes up for this and then forces the pass, which turns into a steal. So, like, I don't know if you can put together a better reactive possession from your center here. This is not a play that Clint Capella makes, I don't think. Certainly not following him out here and then forcing the turnover by simply being there. What did you see on this possession offensively, and what do you think could have been done differently? Do you just want Jaylen Brown to go up for that shot when he gets the rebound?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's become so good at playing off 2 feet that I think if he had done that when he first got in the paint there, that gives him a few more options. It's overall just a sick play from Onyeka, and I don't want to give Hunter more credit than he deserves for that, but I do think him kind of angling him towards Okongwu is good there, and then doing that without fouling is big. He obviously lets Jaylen get the step by, but he could have done a lot more damaging things than what he did. He's still there. He doesn't turn this into free throws for Jaylen. Overall, the real mistake comes at the end for Jaylen. I think in that situation, you should reset 10 out of 10 times. But if you're going to get off your feet like he did, just take this jumper, and live with that result. The panic here is kind of tough. Whether he gets up and blocks that shot again, that's amazing. two blocks in one possession. But if you're going to rise up off your feet here, you got to shoot that ball, or just, again, you've got 14 seconds, pull it back out. We'll see what we can get.
Yeah, I'm happy you're bringing optimism for DeAndre. I could be a little bit critical for
Yeah.
sure, but I think for me, the fouling has been a problem in the past. So, like you said, keeping his hands up, not allowing him to drive back into him, and this is still a contested sort of floater, and DeAndre isn't that attached. You're not going to see Jaylen Brown sort of fade away on this. Like, he's going straight up. So again, good way for you to point that out. And I agree, he should have probably reset this. With the way you could flow right into this with Derek White. That's probably enough space for Derek White too, where he can get downhill. And the Hawks are in scramble mode on the back end. We're not matched up, so definitely agree there. I just think he kind of got in his head a little bit. And here's the last. I think this was the last shot of the game before the foul. So you Tatum on the fading to his right. You just got to get a shot up in that scenario. So I definitely want to look.
Those are always hard when you think that like that foul when you're up by 3 might be coming anyways. I know a lot of teams are doing that now. Maybe the Hawks wouldn't have, but if that's the case, you have to just get that ball up right away, or else you're in a free throw battle, which is tough.
Yeah, we haven't necessarily been. I can't think of a time that we were in control enough to foul. Like a lot of times we're the team that's getting fouled.
Yeah.
But I want to take a quick look at some of the Hawks' offensive possessions. Like, again, to your point where you said you think that maybe Cato wasn't the play there. Let's take some of the overtime possessions from the Hawks. Dyson Daniels was big. I don't know if he just hates the color green. Oh, this is wrong. He might just have beef with the Garden. I don't know. But he was 2 of 2 in overtime. He kind of scared me a little bit. He fumbled it for a bit and then was able to get the floater to roll in. So let's see. Let's look at the first play. I think it was a Jalen Johnson layup. And what's interesting too is, despite the Hawks having a great playmaker, great play finishers, we haven't actually been that great finishing and scoring out of pick and rolls. The actual roll man points per possession is just like we're in the bottom or like in the middle of the league at like 1.11, and even though we run a ton of pick and roll. So on this first look, you're going to see Trey reject a little bit, to pick the ball back up, and then Jaylen goes on this back cut. With Tatum doesn't necessarily have eyes on him. He's trying to help. Checks, and then when he checks the next time,
couple of seconds left to tie it. Here comes Jaylen.
So a good read from Jaylen, just getting downhill. And again, like
just a
you
couple
see
of seconds left.
Jure's kind of occupying two people here too. Like he's battling with Jaylen Brown, and Cornette is a little bit worried about him too, and that creates enough space for this handoff. So I thought that was you kind of making something out of nothing there. Like this definitely was not drawn up, but just reading and reacting. Good growth from the Hawks here to attack the body and then going up strong. Like Cornette is not a small dude.
Jaylen Johnson gliding.
So sometimes Jaylen might not always attack with physicality. So I'm curious, like from the young wings that you've seen in Boston, of course, like with Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Like, I guess when did you feel them start to be really comfortable, like initiating and finishing through contact? Because I feel like for Jaylen right now, he may be even more athletic than both of them, but he's not. I don't think he has a frame, but I also don't think he's like, okay, I'm going to go through this guy. He doesn't have that same mentality that I think JB and JT do.
Yeah, I feel like for Tatum especially, that's something that's come way more over the past maybe 2-3 years at this rate. When he first got into the league, it's hard to remember for some people now, but he used to have this problem on drives where he would, start getting ready to head to the paint. That ball would go flying out of his hands, out of bounds. Like he would just lose it. And now it's, he's willing to kind of play through contact much more than you've seen. He'll put a shoulder down into somebody. He'll finish around Okongwu like he did on that play we were talking about at the end of the game. I think it ultimately it comes as you just get older. He's going to get older and naturally get stronger. But I think, he is a freaky athlete. So that's just going to come with time. I think Jaylen Brown, that is, has always been kind of built like that. He's just a physical dude. And he's obviously got that athletic pop too. But just naturally, as Johnson gets older, he's going to develop into a probably a really, really good slasher with that athleticism, his length. He's just got a lot of great traits.
Yeah, he needs that grown man strength. If you look at the shoulders, I think that's where you really see the strength difference. Like Tatum has got mountains. He's got boulders up there. So I think we'll definitely see that. DeAndre Hunter was breaking my heart a little bit from the three-point line. He had that open look at the end of regulation. This shot, he's also been money in these moments. Like he had the highest, like he was like top 5 in clutch shot making impact last time I checked. But again, this is just Onyeka playing big. Like he's just feasting. Like Derek White grabbed it and he said, "Give me that." And then Jayson Tatum, to his credit, was able to tie him up, and you guys won the jump ball. I really like this sequence. I did tweet tech up.
So did Joe Mazzulla.
Yeah. I wish I could find that clip of Trey and them laughing, but Joe Mazzulla was hyped there. So you see him clapping over there. What did you like? How did you feel about it? Like, do you think this? I kind of wanted a tech, but I was just out of my best interest. But I like that they didn't call anything here. I just thought it was physical play and how you competitive game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad there was no tech for us too. But at the end of the day, I feel like this is the type of physical basketball that everyone's been calling for. Like they want 90s ball back. If we're not handing out techs in situations like this, I think that's awesome. Personally, let's get a little chippy. This is a very intense back and forth game. We don't need to slow the pace down too much, start handing out technical free throws and all that. So I'm all for this, man. I think it's great.
Yeah, that was good for the game. Love seeing that. I think the next possession, so this is after turnover, I believe. Trey comes down, misses the three. Trey had 43, or wait, was it 43? I think he had 43 against Phoenix, and he had about 5 or 6 in and outs. It's been a consistent thing. That hurt when he missed that. Tatum steps out, and the Hawks get another possession. I think this is when my screen cut out. Big block from Tatum. But this was a crazy floater over that contest. Block, recovery. Also, another note here for any Celtics fans who are watching this: DeAndre Hunter has never really been a good passer in his career. Like he's never really seen these angles. Right now, he has like one of the highest potential assist ratios to being on ball. And so a lot of that is him like playing inside the system and just being a little bit more reactive. Dyson loves the spin. He loves the spin. So he sees Jaylen Brown come, spins right off him, creates that space, high points this floating just over Kata's hand. I don't know Kata's wingspan, but that was like it looks like his head is at the rim.
It's definitely at the rim.
Like
that's a tough look, man.
This is a tough.
He's basically facing sideways.
Yeah, he's not even square to the basket. This is ridiculous. In a lot of ways too, these Australian guards don't like to like go to the rim in terms of like if you watch like Ben Simmons, Dante Exum, Josh Giddey, Dyson Daniels, they're very touch heavy, and it can be sometimes frustrating for Hawks fans where it's like attack him. And there were moments in this game where it's like Dyson was able to push it full court. He got all the way to the rim. That was really nice. But then there's sometimes where he does opt to just go for like a not like a super powerful rim finish. But I think the fact that he can do this so seamlessly and so fluidly is unbelievable. And it also is a great fit for Trae, because when you think about Trae's pick and roll game, a lot of times he's not driving all the way to the rim. He is hitting that short roll. And so guys who can operate in the paint and have the touch there from the floater range is so important. And that's why I think guys like Onyeka who have that hook, he has that baby hook. Jaylen has touch around the rim. Dyson Daniels has touch around the rim. It makes the Hawks really tough to guard because Trae doesn't have to get all the way downhill to create those looks for him. So that was a crazy score. I think that's probably the one you're thinking about where you were saying his touch on floaters is just ridiculous.
I mean, there were a couple of it. Yeah, that was a player right there.
So this is after a Boston three. Trae gets an open three off the Cater drop. Knocks this down. Big three. This is a deep drop from Cater. Especially when I understand with the way the screen is, but he's backing up even before Onyeka rolls. So I think this is more so like he's kind of thinking like, okay, I have to drop here, as opposed to like reading what's happening. Because if Onyeka isn't going to roll, he's going to be tied up with Jaylen, and he still hasn't rolled at this point, you should probably get up. And I think this is probably somewhere where you do miss someone like Al Horford, where Al can switch out there, or Al can hedge a little bit better. I think, but again, it's tough to ask him to guard that much in space. He's not as mobile as any other big on the roster. Would you be more comfortable with having Cornette at the level of the screen here, or do you think this is just like probably would be like a similar look with Cornette?
I think it's kind of what you're pointing out is just really like awareness. You're seeing right here in that freeze frame, like Jaylen's tied up, Trae's clearly coming off that, that pick and roll.
Like
his number one option is going to be that pull-up three. If he's going to drive on you, then you get into a position where maybe D White has to rotate over and help, but still, you can't just let him walk right into this three at this point. I mean, we can talk about screen navigation. Maybe Jaylen can get around that better to start things off.
Yeah.
But this was kind of my point earlier, that I felt like Okongwu was setting just like really freeing screens for Trae, and he was always kind of working with an advantage after that.
And look at Mazzulla's reaction too. I think he's looking at Kata here.
It might be the hold. I can't tell if he's looking at Kata or talking about the screen.
I don't see him look to the ref here. I think he maybe want him a little bit higher. It looks like Sam Cassell says, "Get up." Cassell's right here. So I don't know, but I don't think that was in the game plan to drop that deep. This was a scary play for Jaylen. My screen cut out, and then I saw them swabbing his head. I didn't see what happened. So this is again like just kind of like the issue with trapping. This is what you were saying, like where if Kate is on the floor, you trap Trae, but you're not actually disrupting him, and he can split it like that. It's really tough. And the help has to come from Jaylen Brown here, who doesn't have a good angle to the ball because he's not the low man. So this is intentional by the Hawks here. Like they want to keep Payton pushing as the low man, and it results in a longer closeout for Jaylen, and he's out of control. And unfortunately, just completely loses balance. It's good to see that he was able to pop up. Like I thought he might have had to be like evaluated for concussion, and I think you was able to finish this big play. But I guess like from here, like from a schematics perspective, like you just would rather have a hedge here, Do you just think the trap wasn't aggressive enough, or like what do you think could have been done better here?
I just feel like it's a little bit strange to go from that massively deep drop to then this sort of like half commitment to the trap here.
Mhm.
Like, can't we just go with like a higher drop or like just get closer to the level of the screen there? I didn't feel like Keita was very effective up here. Like, he's not really impacting anything with this. Like, go get your body closer to him. Use those long arms.
Okongwu, space in
Because
the
I don't
lane
think
and
that
one as Brown
was very
goes
effective.
flying. Hawks space in
And
the
like again, just judging by Missoula's reaction, I don't think this was what they wanted to see here. It looks like
Yeah, he looks really frustrated.
it almost looks like he's going like this, like he's like actually trapping. So I think
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, best practice, like feet basically for your two defenders should be connected. If you look at these two kind of like look at how far apart they are, they're not really doing anything. That's
yeah,
not a difficult pass for Trey to make. Obviously, pretty, minor compliment, but Okongwu is just in a good space on the roll there. He's a pretty good distance away from both of them. Tatum and Brown can't really get to him easily, so that's good. But like they're not impacting Trey at all here. He just kind of throws a nonchalant pass to the short roll. So
yeah.
that's where my problem lies. We're not really doing anything with this trap. I would be more aggressive if we're going to go that route, but that's not really what they did on the next possession, I don't think either.
So then we see you guys sort of switch up the matchups, and so Keita is on Dyson here, I believe is
Mhm.
what happened. And so the point here is for him to be able to roam if they don't bring Dyson to the action. So the Hawks decide to bring Dyson to the action. Um, he creates some space here, and this is where like he's not even really creating much of an advantage. He pitches it back to Trey, step up screen. Keita's up high again, and it's just split. So Keita looks like he's coming up. Maybe not for that same trap, but maybe like for a higher drop. Dyson's in, they're not able to close that gap. It gets split. I think either Dyson fumbled it or maybe Keita got a hand on it.
Mhm.
Dyson doesn't see a rim protector there. He almost chokes this. Like it was pretty close to him fumbling it. Decides he maybe wants to pass it, goes up, little short floater, rolls it over the top of the rim. Again, like I don't think this is great defense from Keita. Even his positioning, like
Mhm.
his hands are not in a good spot. His feet are a mess. Like he's almost knock kneed when he's coming up. Like he just is not in good position. At the very most, you want to kick that. Like you see Jokic do that all the time.
Mhm.
You just have to deflect that ball because there's just too much of a runway for Dyson, and it ends up being 2 points. Um, I just think he's being a little bit overextended here. I almost thought like Cornette was in foul trouble. I was like, why is he on the floor? But he wasn't, right? Like he just that was just the option they went with.
Yeah, I mean, I think he only finished with like 2
Yeah,
fouls,
he,
so
yeah,
I that was my initial thought too, without really paying attention to the fouls. I figured he must have had a couple on him, so they went with this look in overtime. Obviously, I do think it's important to give Dyson some credit on that possession specifically too. I think sometimes the Celtics have trouble since they're so kind of switch oriented when he goes to set this screen, just slipping out so quickly here. Like, look at how fast he gets out of that. That
Mhm,
obviously messes with Keita. But to your
mhm.
point too, Keita's positioning, like what he's seeing right there, there's no actual screen, and it's hard to tell if he kind of calls out for a switch on that split second right there. Like he sort of motions for something with his right hand,
Yeah.
um, but it just wasn't needed either way. And I do think it's worth at least giving Dyson some credit on that to get out quick. And I've noticed recently that that's sort of messing with the Celtics, like ghost screens, just quick slips too.
Yeah, that's a great pickup. I didn't even really pay attention to that, but that's definitely a wrinkle that made it tougher for Katie to contain that. And Dyson's
Hmm.
really good in those types of scenarios. I didn't love this shot, especially because we had been able to like create some issues for you guys on these pick and rolls. Um, also just in general, it didn't seem like the Hawks were as interested in like playing with movement on these possessions. We kind of have a tendency to do like I default to ISO at sometimes as well. So I wasn't a huge fan of this, but I thought this could come back to bite us. Especially like this should have been like Dre isn't ready when the ball goes up. His hands are low. Like Tatum just is able to get a hand on it. Should have been
This
offensive
one
rebound.
hurt in real time because I thought that ball was actually going to go to Keita, who looked like he was leaking out. I don't think Tatum saw him or knew he could make that pass right away, but they end up, I think, having to take a timeout and reset after that one.
Yeah, so I wanna ask you just a couple of questions before we wrap up.
Mhm.
Like, how do you feel about the Anomaly nickname and like how it's sort of just going around?
I think it's fun, man. Like it's so stupid, but it riles people up, which I think is kind of why some Celtics fans that I know are leaning into it. Personally, that's why I think it's fun. It's just stupid. I'm not actually gonna call the guy the Anomaly. Let's be real, but anytime you post about that, you're getting people like, "That's a terrible nickname. That doesn't make any sense." You know, in theory, I kinda get what the guy was cooking that
No,
posted
exactly.
about
Yeah,
it,
it's not a crazy
the
thing.
idea there.
It's not
Yeah,
crazy. Yeah, but it's still
but
like
no,
it's.
at the end of the day, we're not calling him that.
I saw like the Duke of Boston. How do you like that one?
It's alright, like, I'm fine if we just stick with, like, JT, you know? Not everybody needs a nickname. If it comes naturally or it's given by a player, like, Shaq gives Paul Pierce the Truth nickname and it sticks like that when it's organic, that makes sense, but he's a great player, and maybe for some, he's not the most exciting guy, so I don't know if he's gonna have a cool nickname that sticks, but I don't know, I'm fine with calling the guy JT.
I think it's crazy that like he's so unproblematic, and I'm not saying I'm not complicit in some of the Tatum hate, and it's not. I have nothing to do. It's just Celtics. Like you guys have historically run the conference. Um, the whole Bill Russell stuff. We drafted him, but there's like rumors about like us why he ended up not actually playing for the Hawks, stuff like that. We've been intertwined for a long time. We've existed for about the same amount of time as you guys have, and we have no championships in Atlanta. So obviously, there's a little bit of bitterness my way. It's nothing about Tatum in particular, but I think he's like I read that tweet. I was like, that's not crazy. Like he is in a lot of ways not doing things 6'10" guys aren't supposed to be able to do. And I think his evolution is what a lot of teams want their wings to eventually aspire for. Like he is the blueprint for coming as not a little bit more than a 3-and-D guy, but like really embrace creating for yourself, becoming a pull-up 3-point threat, getting to the rim by yourself. That's not what a lot of wings are able to do in this league. So like for me in particular, like I look to the Celtics as an example for where I want Jalen Johnson and Zachary Ricochet to be. I want them to be these dynamic wings who can ball handle, create for one another by setting screens, be physical on the glass. Like there's a lot of the ways I think you guys are prototypical in the way a lot of teams will be playing. And I guess that's why I'm curious because the NBA, at least in my opinion, has become more diverse than ever in terms of play style. Like there may be this whole narrative that everyone gets up threes, but you guys don't generate threes the same way Cleveland does, or OKC, or Atlanta, or Detroit. Like your offense is very much predicated on the drive and kick, but you have the post threats, you have the pick and pop threats, you have the pick and roll threats. Like there's a lot more to the actual fabric of the offense. And I guess especially when I think about the way the Hawks play you guys, what do you think is the biggest threat, I guess, in terms of play style and the way that you guys play? Is it a high 3-point volume team, somewhat similar to like, I guess, like who's behind you guys? I think it's Chicago, but they're not obviously on that same trajectory. But I guess like maybe a Cleveland, which is more, they're also attempting 40 plus threes a game per 100. So do you think a team more so like Cleveland, which generates a ton of threes, or a team more so like a Denver that really dominates the paint but still generates threes? And like, where do you think like the biggest Achilles heel, I guess, is in terms of how play styles match up?
Yeah, that's another good question. I feel like it's funny to say, but most Celtics fans would agree that last season, the biggest test that we had was the Indiana Pacers. And a lot of that came down to the pace that they play with. But I think it's just the ability to kind of freestyle things a little bit. Like even what I saw from you guys tonight, especially in kind of the first half, I was really impressed by the pace you were playing with and
Mhm.
how not just like getting the ball across half court, but getting into, let's say, the first dribble handoff that flows into the next one. You would go from side to side. And I think a team that's kind of capable of matching them with some offensive movement like that, and then having the versatility to defend. So, I mean, I personally feel like there's no bigger threat than OKC this season.
Mm.
But the Cavs are showing me something. I'm not going to take them lightly. I think going against Donovan Mitchell in a series is horrible. I don't want to ever experience that man fully healthy. We lucked out a little bit. I don't think they would have beat us last year either way. But
Right.
yeah, he's a tough cover, man. I don't know. I don't think there's really one perfect answer for that question. But if a team can sort of kind of match their 3-point volume and also has at least enough versatility to, like we talked about earlier, sort of like accept those one-on-one matchups and live with that more with both of the Jays, I think that's your best shot of, you know, at least pushing them more. And I think there's certain teams like OKC's got the matchup versatility to do that aspect. Will their offense always hold up? You know, they're not the best 3-point shooting team necessarily, but they have
Right.
one of the best offensive engines in the league too. So um, I don't know if there's one perfect answer. I'm interested to hear what you think about that, though.
Yeah. So tonight, Boston scored the lowest points in the half court per 100 possessions against any team this season. So it was just 77. And I think your point about versatility is a big reason why. So we're like a lot of that switching or like being able to stay at home is kind of negated because you can trust guys in space. And I think for that example, OKC is the best. But then offensively, in terms of attacking the Celtics, I don't think OKC is as suited. Like I think it would more so be a team like Denver that's able to more reliably generate paint touches because I think that's ultimately like the biggest. Like for example, when we played you guys the first time in the Cup, we got outscored by 24 points from the 3-point line. And I think they also had advantage on the free throw line. So you have to, I think getting into a 3-point shooting battle with Boston is a death sentence just because you're going to be better. You're going to take more than everyone and you're going to limit more than a team can like reliably get up. And so I do think some sort of some sort of theoretical team that somehow had the versatility to switch all those pick and rolls in those ghost screens and also punish Boston in the paint would be the best matchup. But that doesn't exist. And so that's
Mhm.
why I still view you guys as the premier contenders, even if it has been a little up and down this particular season. I think starting with that loss to OKC, it's been win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. Some guys have, like Derek White in particular, he struggled. Like over the last 5 games, he's averaging 9 points, 40 true shooting percentage, which is strange. Like from someone like him he's been so reliable, like his entire time as a Celtic. So I guess like what do you credit this sort of like unpredictability in terms of game to game matchups from? Is it concerning you a little bit in terms of like long term contention, or I guess like is because to me, I think I do value the regular season, and you guys were world beaters last year, which was a big reason why you're able to keep it going towards the title. And I think this year, like Porzingis has been in and out. There is such thing as championship hangover. How I guess like how worried are you about from what you've seen from the inconsistency in results?
Yeah, I don't know if my answer is going to be sufficient for you, but I feel like I have such a low capacity for being able to be worried about this team after the championship. Like
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I just, we did it. It's wonderful. I don't want that just to be a one and done year, but
Mhm.
I do think there's Missoula said it at the beginning of the season. You probably saw the meme, but like he wants the red dot right in between the forehead. There's just a lot of that where it feels like every game the Celtics are kind of like that barometer for their opponent's season. Like for you guys, that probably feels like a statement win. You know what I mean? But that's sort of how it seems to feel every single team that plays the Celtics. And it makes sense that with sort of a championship hangover, I guess, that they can't every single night get to 110%,
Mm.
be at that level that they were when they were really chasing it last year. Now to me, it feels at least a little bit like let's get back to that level, like get back to the playoffs because we know what it's going to take once we get there. Let's get there healthy.
Mhm.
So we've seen them get up for some games this year. I just don't know if it's as consistent. And from a viewing perspective as a fan, that's not fun to watch necessarily, but I can understand it if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't have a championship hangover to point to, like in terms of empathize with, but I do know when Trae Young and the Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals, the offseason before the next season, Trey said the regular season is boring. And I was like, oh my gosh, like he thinks he completed basketball. And what did we do? We lost in the play in embarrassing fashion to Miami. And I do think it's a mental thing where it's like we went through a gauntlet. Those guys played in the Olympics. It's been a nonstop year of basketball. And teams, like you said, they're giving them their best every night. These are the defending champs. It's tough to repeat in this year's NBA. We haven't had a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors. That's 7 years. It's the longest stretch in NBA history where we haven't had a repeat champion. If anyone was going to repeat, it'd be you guys. And I still think that no one has a combination of lack of defensive liabilities, versatility of play on both ends, tough shot making, and when fully healthy, Kristaps Porzingis is just a nightmare in the pick and roll. Like it's still, I don't know. I give so much credit to Brad Stevens because the team that he's amassed, the extensions that guys have signed, he got Kristaps Porzingis for peanuts. Like and not only that, he had one trade fail and still was able to come out with even possibly, I think, an even better trade than the original deal that was constructed. And so I give him a lot of flowers, and I think he won Executive of the Year, right? Didn't he? Or has he won it? Yeah. So like he was absolutely that type of guy, and I have so much faith in this roster going forward, which is also why, as a fan of someone who's a little bit further from contention, I don't even want us to make a move because I feel like this is your conference, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. So I definitely understand that perspective where it's like I trust this team, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think in terms of like panic for Celtics fans, like I've seen a lot of people like we're not winning a championship. Oh, like it's over. Like it's not the same as last year. I mean, it's not going to be, but I still don't think you guys should have a ton of worry at all. But I do want to finish that with one question about like the center position and just like the overall stability of that. Do you think there could be a move for someone? I don't really think if anyone's available. Like, I mean, if you want Clint Capella, like let me know. Let me get a first, maybe Jaden Springer, and we can talk. But do you think there's any sort of moves that may be made, or do you think you're just going to like try and get Kristaps as healthy as possible and see if what Al Horford can give you? Because that Dominican he gave me fits in Atlanta. I loved him so much, but I never saw him. First off, he never stretched his range beyond the 3-point line. And then he was never this good defensively. Like, of course, he was strong in the post, but the versatility, like, he frustrates the hell out of me. And he also badmouthed us when he went to Philly. So it's hard for me to root for him, even though he's a Hawks legend. But sorry, ignore that rant. Do you think there's going to be a move at some point, particularly for the center position? If not, where do you think it would be?
I don't think I would like them even to go center first. I don't think that they'll end up looking at the center market either. I feel like in the long run, the goal is just to have Porzingis and Horford healthy for the playoffs. That's why they're being aggressive with their days off, their rest days, where surprisingly they went both last night against Orlando and then both get the night off tonight, which is sort of unusual for them. We've seen it maybe once or twice before where they do it that way. But I think at the end of the day, I'm pretty high on what Cornette can do in a third big capacity. Like I feel like he's perfectly capable of fulfilling that role. Once we're talking about getting into the fourth or fifth center in any given team, is it really going to be that significant of a guy? Like how many teams from top to bottom, their center depth is really that much better than the Celtics when they're fully healthy? I don't think most fourth string centers are really moving the needle for a lot of teams. So I think really if I was going to look somewhere, it would be at like a backup wing position because I'd like to see our young guy Jordan Walsh take that leap, and I think he's making some progress. but he doesn't seem like he's ready for it this year. So if they could get a guy, and unfortunately O'Shea Brissett didn't want to come run it back with us. I thought he was really, very solid in that role, and it was just kind of perfect for him. But I would love them to have sort of that energy guy that can pick up some of the better wings off of the bench in the league and, play with some athleticism. I don't know who that guy's going to be, but that's really where I would look more. I think everything else, they're in decent position. They got Pritchard for the bench scoring in most cases. It's been an unfortunate sort of odd down year for Sam Hauser. If he
Yeah.
regains some of his shot making, then we're even better, in even better position. But I think a more versatile wing defender with some athleticism is kind of always like a big need for a team. And I think we're missing that right now.
You guys have had a lot of those guys in the past, like Aaron Nesmith.
Mhm.
On, of course, he didn't have like his big leap until he ended up getting traded. I like Jordan Walsh a lot. I like Jaden Springer a lot. Both those guys are. Jaden Springer's a little bit more volatile, but I do wonder like what type of player that could be. But I agree though, like in terms of like the top 3 to 4 centers, it's not much. And also in the playoffs, it's going to be an 8-man anyway, and that's where you guys
Yeah.
will be, regardless of the inconsistency of the last couple of weeks. I'm expecting it to turn up at some point. But Nate, I appreciate you so much. Definitely appreciate you breaking down the film with me. If we get you guys in the first round, I'll definitely bring you back on. I do like my
Mhm.
Hawks. I think we match up pretty well. But overall, shot making wise, I think we come up short. So it'd be a really tough series. I think we would play you guys hard. But I'd have to see some growth from some guys to feel like, okay, we can actually pull that upside off. Also, like because you guys knocked us out in the 23 playoffs, I don't know if I want to go through that again. But I think it's a really fun series. It's been a series of great games against you guys. So again, I appreciate you so much. And definitely let people know where they can find your work. I know you write for the Celtics blog, so definitely plug it right now.
Yeah, I've been doing some, like you said, some writing for CelticsBlog this year. You can obviously find that if you go check out our website. You can also find me on Twitter, usually under Nate NEIGHT_. So you can find me there. Talk about Celtics primarily, but I'm all around the league, bouncing around. Big into like player development in general. So I feel like any of the young guys, I'm always looking at them, watching their film. But yeah, I mean, pleasure. I'm really glad we finally got to connect. I know we missed out on like the first 2 Celtics matchups, but this was great. You're a really smart guy, so I'm glad we got the chance to sit down.
Appreciate it, Nate. You guys make sure you tap in with his work. He does great stuff covering the Celtics, and I feel like I definitely learned something when his work comes across. Appreciate everyone who listened. Make sure you give the podcast a like, follow, subscribe, follow Nate. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.